Hello, everyone, and welcome to another new series. That's right, we're just rolling them out. We're rolling them out. We're not even thinking about it, just pushing them out there. And this one is another NCAA rebuild, Dynasty mode, however you want to call it. This one's going to be just like the Northwestern one. We're just kind of going to progress through the years here and try and turn around a program. I don't have such a lofty, ambitious goal like I did with Northwestern to do it for like 20 years. I just want to see how much we can do with the University of Louisiana Monroe Indians in as quick amount of time as we can. So we're setting up our coach here. Mr. Lou Nips is going to be his name. Lou Nips is going to be our coach trudging into battle with this pretty destitute ULM squad. Louisiana Monroe, in the year that this game takes place, they would fire their coach, I think, a few games into the season and have an interim. So I like to think that they just got ahead of the game, said, yeah, dog, it's not going to work, and sent out Lou Nips with this poorly constructed roster, as you can see in front of you, this poorly constructed roster, and said, hey, make the most of it year one, and then it's yours to take the keys. So I don't know how long we're going to do this, but I'm just going to go with it until I guess I get fired or until I feel satisfied. I'd like to win the Sun Belt like a bunch of times and be the class of the Sun Belt, and then we might do like a Power 5 jump and see what we can do there. That'd be funny if the ULM was in the SEC. but yeah, so I'm kind of glossing over the roster. There's not much to talk about. We have some solid linebackers for some reason, or just like one or two of them. It's kind of funny, but the rest of the roster is really bad. It's a pretty disgusting roster. About 60s all over with a couple 70s sprinkled throughout. But this left outside linebacker is our best player by a wide margin, so he's kind of going to be the thing we lean on. So this is the preseason projection of the Sun Belt. We are projected to come in last behind our rival Louisiana Lafayette, the Raging Cajuns. So this is the Sun Belt, in case you're unaware: Arkansas State, Idaho, Middle Tennessee State, New Mexico State, North Texas, Lafayette, and of course us, Monroe. So it's a small conference. We're not even going to have a full conference schedule, so we can schedule an extra out-of-conference game just to get to 12 most years. Which might be what we do to help get us an extra win or so. Already in year one, ULM has an FCS game scheduled, so we're just going to leave that on the schedule and try and squeeze a win out of there, because I'm not really sure how bad this first year is going to go. We might get fired in our first year for all I know, but we're going to mess with the coaching strategies. They already had a pretty drastic one on offense and defense. We're going to try and even it out a little bit more and change the strategy on both sides of the ball. I want the defense to be a little bit more even, or at least the offense to be a little bit more even, because we really don't have a strong passing or run game on either side. So here's a look at the schedule. We start the season off at Ole Miss and then go straight to Kansas State before we have a winnable game. And then we sprinkle in some conference games in between this Tulane game that we also have. And then we have a Power 5 matchup in Auburn against the Tigers before closing out with some more conference play. So we're not going to beat around the bush much longer. We're just going to hop right into this. It's going to be a quick one here because there ain't much to talk about. We have a bad team, a bad roster, and a pretty easy schedule. So we're going to hop right in and see what we can do here as we start the week off on a bye and we go into week 2, our first official game, getting absolutely blown out by Ole Miss. At least we score 14 points, so that's nice. Will Kansas State be much nicer? No. 66-0. Oh, put a pin in that, because I hope that's our worst loss as coach. As we move into our first winnable game, and we barely win it against an unnamed FCS team. They wouldn't even let me put an actual one in there. We barely beat them, and then followed up with another win over Arkansas State, who I think are also the Indians. But we barely beat them by a field goal, an absolute shutout. I didn't think our offense had it in them. But we finally get a break after a tumultuous first handful of weeks before getting blown out by Tulane, who's off to a pretty hot start. They're not that great of a team, but they're off to a good start here. And then we pick up a much-needed win against Idaho, who has not won a game. They hardly ever win games in these. But New Mexico State, who has also barely won a game, blows us out, man. They were 1-5, and they're in our conference. They can't be that much better of a team, but they do blow us out to send us to 3-4. But we pick up a win against another terrible Utah State team, who's independent, 31-6. And that will put us at 500 heading towards the last few games of the season. So, hey, man, bowl's still on the table, but not if we lose games like this to a bad North Texas team who picks up their third win of the season in blowout fashion. The games we're getting blown out in, the ones we're winning, just aren't making sense. I don't know why we're losing to some teams the way we are and winning others. But we finally have our Power 5 game against Auburn, who's having a really tough year, but not so tough that they would roll over to this bad Louisiana Monroe squad. So as we head down to the home stretch or our last couple of games here, a brutal road stint just continues to get worse as Middle Tennessee State, which is probably going to win our conference, picks up their 7th win of the year. And then we do manage to pull out our rivalry game, which is always important. I don't think rivalries are that big of a thing in NCAA 03 yet. I think it's 04 that really starts that trend. But it's important to win them. I think it's important to win them. I'm sure it's probably still a term of our contract, so we definitely need to win. So the running back from Nebraska wins himself the Heisman Trophy. I'm sure you guys know who that is. Middle Tennessee State, the only team I think from our conference that got a bowl bid, gets blown out by TCU, so there's not really much else for our conference going on here in bowl season. But if you guys want to look at the lay of college football in this first year, the 02-03 season, I guess it would be. But here it is. So a lot of fun teams who like to squeak in there. North Carolina and Louisiana Tech bowl game is disgusting. It's gross. Wow, look at that, bro. South Carolina, Clemson in a bowl game. That's kind of nuts, isn't it? And South Carolina dropped 60 points on Clemson. That's nuts. That is absolutely crazy, man. That managed to be a bowl game. And so your national title game is between Marshall and Miami. Marshall's always good in the first year in these like 2 NCAA games, but they typically don't get that recognition. So that's crazy. That's weird. Looking over at our stats now, our quarterback had an absolutely horrendous year. He's a sophomore, and I'll be damned if he sees the field again after this performance, dude. That was just absolutely disgusting. I mean, just terrible. Our running back doesn't have a horrendous year. He doesn't find the end zone much with 678 yards. I guess in our first year we'll take, but he's a senior, so that's kind of bad for him. But we do have a receiver who puts down almost 1,500 yards, dude, and 9 touchdowns. I mean, that is an actual decent season. Like, a great season for how bad our offense was, dude. And, like, scoring wasn't, like, our big thing. And we almost have another receiver get 1,000 yards. So I don't know how our quarterback was as terrible as he was. He only threw for over 2,000 yards. 2,500 yards? And most of that had to go to that one receiver? That's nuts. Our right tackle is an amazing year, only allowing 2 sacks to his 24 pancakes. But the rest of the line, you can't say that about them. You really can't say that about them, as they struggle across the board to replicate the same kind of production. So our right outside linebacker, who's not our best player statistically, leads the team in tackles and for sure TFLs. I don't think anyone's touching 16 TFLs. Nothing close. He also leads the team in sacks. This dude was absolutely nuts. He was all over the place. Our left outside linebacker, who is our best player statistically, leads the team in INTs. So that's where he comes in. Our cornerback leads the team in deflections. So, those are good defensive numbers. I mean, we play in a terrible conference, so I don't know how much you want to magnify these numbers, but we're going to get better. So our kicker has a terrible year. Again, kicking is always bad in this game. I don't know why. The sim just never wants to make kickers decent. So quickly going to flip through the first team All-Americans because we for sure don't have anybody in that. I think our receiver should at least get second team or something because that's actually a pretty good season that he had. But I don't think we're going to get the recognition from the college football world, and rightfully so. Again, we were an awful team, so not as bad as I thought. Remember, we were projected to be last in the Sun Belt, and we are probably somewhere in the middle, I would say. I mean, there's only 7 teams, so if you have a decent, 500 record in conference, you go 4-3, you'll probably sit third in the conference. But here's a look at our stat rankings in the rest of college football. Our offense was absolutely horrendous in most metrics. I mean, we were just horrible all around, just awful. Rushing TDs, we only had 6, dude. I think 113 is last. I think that's last in all of FBS. So, we really laid a wet fart on offense here. And defense isn't a whole lot better. I mean, look at that, dude. Anything over 100 is just, oh, God. It's actually kind of crazy that we won 5 games. I don't know how the hell we won 5 games with these numbers being as bad as they are. I mean, the efficiency numbers are considerably higher, so maybe that's where, we just, we're getting them on third down, bro. Hey, we can't throw for much, we can't run, but hey, get us on third down, and you're cooked. I don't know. I genuinely just don't know. But, yeah, we weren't a great team. There's probably not much of a reason to really look at our stats, but it is what it is. We'll change. Here's a look at the polls here. Marshall drops to 4 after losing the national title here. The top 10 is kind of looking a little bit familiar from the current years, except for Nebraska, of course, and Florida. But Oklahoma comes in here at 10th after losing their bowl game. Ohio State's at 12. That's kind of gross. Ole Miss and Kansas State sit side by side in the rankings, and both those teams kicked the snot out of us at the beginning of the year. Illinois is in the rankings, which is gross. Colorado manages to get ranked, and Georgia and Virginia Tech also sneak into the rankings. Boise State moves up to 23rd, which leaves room for Washington State and South Carolina to get ranked to end the year. So, looking over the standings again, we come in third in the Sun Belt after going 3-3 in conference play, matching the same overall record as New Mexico State, who won all their games in conference. They didn't win a single out-of-conference game. If they did, they probably would have went to a bowl game. But Middle Tennessee State is the class of our conference, as we expected during the year. Idaho managed to win a single game, and other than that, there's not a whole lot else going on. So here's kind of the lay of our program as it stands now. We are still 1-star prestige, and that's not going to go up until we at least win a bowl game or do something impressive, which is my goal for year number 2. I'm hoping we can at least, if we manage to win 5 games in our first year, we should be able to win at least 6 or 7 in our next. So that's going to be the goal, and hopefully I see you guys in the next videos. We continue our Monroe Dynasty mode, see how far we can take this thing, hopefully very far.